Steve Harvey is a man of a multitude of talents. Comedian, actor, host of the popular TV show Family Feud, and well known for calling out the wrong Miss Universe in 2015.
I have to apologize. Miss Universe 2015 is Philippines.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine. You're not really fine. You just can't get into it because they would never understand.
But what many of you may not have known about Steve Harvey is that he is also an author. He has written several books about topics ranging from self-help to relationship advice, originating from his Strawberry Lettuce segment from his morning show. I personally don't understand how he feels qualified on the matter given that he has been divorced 3 times. But hey, we'll give him a chance. We'll have a listen to what he has to say. We're open-minded on this channel. But if I could sum up his advice in one sentence, it would be that men are trash. It's just the way they are. There's not much you can do about it, so get over it. Oh, and also while we're at it, I do want to make it clear that his advice is solely directed at cishet couples, if that wasn't obvious enough. So if any of you belong to the alphabet mafia, you can take a backseat and watch this dumpster fire because for some reason, despite writing several books about relationships, Steve Harvey fails to even acknowledge the idea of same-sex relationships. It's like gay people just doesn't exist in the Steve Harvey universe. He's the type to think that men and women simply just can't be friends and gay men are not real men.
I mean, number one, there isn't a real man living that can live without one of you. He does not exist. We have to have you. That's a great piece of knowledge to have in the holster.
Wait a second. Are you talking about a sexual relationship? Because there are gay men out there who can live without us sexually.
Real men.
Also, as you probably have picked up by now, his books are directed at women. His target demographic is cishet women who are looking to date men. So it's all about how women should do this and do that and how they should be to attract a man. And by doing so, he simultaneously just inserts himself in the manosphere, the red pill community, consisting of alpha males, pickup artists, and, all those fun, women-loving communities. His book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, which we will be discussing today, is a prime example of this. Harvey promotes this book as an insight to the psyche of the man, as everything you need to know about men and relationships. He uses the analogy of the cheating scandal by the football team New England Patriots, who were caught secretly filming their opponents' practices and thus giving them an unfair advantage by knowing their tricks and tactics. Harvey plans to do the same for women, but with men. All of this sound a little out there, but so far it really doesn't seem that bad. Doesn't have your alarm bells ringing yet. But literally the first sentence that Harvey starts the book with is that men are simple. Women, on the other hand, are the complicated ones. They are making things harder than it should be, so it is them that need to step up and take accountability. Which, firstly, is misogynistic as f***. Secondly, it's not even true. While there may be many men out there who think of themselves as simple, if you ask women, many will tell you otherwise. Furthermore, I went ahead and posted on r/AskReddit myself, does the idea that men are simple creatures and women are complicated ring true to you? And many people, including men, said no. And before you come at me for using Reddit for my research, Steve Harvey himself doesn't mention a single woman in his book that is aimed at women. His only sources are, I've got male friends, I've talked to a lot of people, so you should trust me. The whole book feels like the embodiment of the subreddit, men writing women. There is no mention of any women, not even a consultation with a woman, until the very end where he does like a little Q&A with his audience. And while we're at it, I do want to briefly talk about the concept of accountability, because I think accountability is one of those things that has been thrown around the internet so many times at so many instances that I think at this point it has kind of lost its meaning. So let's strip it down at its bare bones. According to Merriam-Webster, accountability is defined as the quality or state of being accountable, an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. If Steve Harvey really wanted to write a book about taking accountability, he would direct it towards men instead. He himself admits that he did some things wrong in his relationships, he made some mistakes. I mean, there is a reason as to why he's at his fourth marriage. Accountability, according to its definition, in this case would involve Harvey writing a book directed at men, admitting his mistakes, work towards bettering himself, and maybe even provide advice to younger men as to how to avoid making the mistakes he made. Instead, what Harvey does is that he blames women. Throughout the book, in some way or another, it is women's fault that allowed him to make the mistakes he made.
I know all the mistakes I made. I know all the mistakes women allowed me to make. And I put them in a book for you. So, look.
I like that part. Women allowed you to make the mistake?
Yeah, women allowed me to make a lot of these mistakes.
And let's be honest, if men really were as simple as Harvey claims them to be, he wouldn't even have to write this book in the first place. But according to Harvey, men do not offend, and therapy and counseling is just sitting on the couch and talking to a person with a tablet and getting judged for every move you've ever made. Thank God we've got Steve Harvey to be the spokesperson for all men. That must be so difficult for you. According to Steve Harvey, there are only 3 ways that men show love. He calls them the 3 P's of love: profess, provide, and protect. If your man loves you, he's willing to tell anybody and everybody, "Look man, this is my woman," or "This is my girl, my baby's mama," or "My lady." If a guy is serious about you, in his words, he professes you as his own. Once we have claimed you, oh my god, and you have returned the honor, we're going to start bringing home the bacon. According to Harvey, the instinct of providing and protecting is something that is primal to the man, so much so that it is encoded in his DNA. It's not something that the society pressures you to be or something that was enforced onto you during your upbringing. No, it's just the way you were born. It's just the way you are. He talks about how before being a television host and a celebrity, he got laid off his old job and how it led him to having a full-on existential crisis because his role and purpose in life as provider and the protector was no longer applicable. So in his words, he was doomed. And honestly, it was depressing to read because to him, while it may have been a source of pride as he uses himself as an example of how men think and how they perceive the world, but to me, when I read that, I perceived it to be someone who is so insecure of himself and the fragility of his masculinity that when he fails to fulfill his dedicated roles in society, he deems himself to be unworthy of love. Going into this, I did not know much about Steve Harvey aside from him being some sort of an entertainer. So I'm glad that he mentions in this book that he's a comedian because I wouldn't have known it otherwise. Throughout the book, he doesn't really say or do anything funny though. Rather, he just tells you how funny he is and how good he is at his job. I've been a living for more than 20 years making people laugh. My humor is always rooted in truth and full of wisdom. The kind that comes from living, watching, learning, and knowing. I'm told my jokes strike chords with people because they can relate to them. See, I knew I was funny. Those business cards announced that I was Steve Harvey, who I am, and that I had a special talent in comedy. I got a company to run, I got a schedule to keep, I'm on the road, on the stage, on the
controlled
radio,
by 15
writing
minutes
books,
by making
acting,
people laugh
hard enough
my
to
success
remember.
in getting to
And
be
then
one of the
parlayed
kings
it
of
in
comedy
two gigs
was
as the
based on
featured
my
comedian,
desire and
the
ability
performer
to
who
control
gets my
30
product
minutes
on the
my
stage.
performance.
From
And
the
then
moment I
became
became
a
a
comedian,
comedian,
I
I
stepped
stepped
onto
on
that
stage,
stage, ready
making
to
people
doing
laugh
that
so
very
hard
exactly
that
what
I
I wanted
knew
to
before I
succeed
even
and
told
any
my
other
friends
choice
it
showed
took
me
me
several
several
years
years
to
to
go
get
from
that.
just being
I have a
funny
really
to
popular
made
side goal was to
$40
become a
$105
headliner,
per
and knowing
night,
which
which
me
means
entire life
$500
let us help
man
them
with
solve
my
it
eye on
and
that
$100
prize.
get all
I
cut
was
through
even
their
making
nails and letters
letters
from
from
people
$500 a week.
and excellent at my craft, providing for the ones he loves and cares about, whether it's monetarily or with sweat equity, is a part of a man's DNA. It is quite bold to speak for all men, I think, because there definitely are men out there who do not mind stepping down the role of being the provider, who do not feel emasculated doing so. There are stay at home dads, single dads who rear children and perform the traditionally feminine roles, but Harvey would probably say that they're not real men, so they don't count. It's interesting how Harvey goes on about how men do not need to vent, how their DNA isn't made up for the heartfelt outpouring. Yet at the same time, he demands women to be emotionally supportive to him, to give him little compliments for doing the bare minimum, how you need to constantly validate his need to put on a charade of him being essential in the household, even if you very well are able to provide for yourself, how you need to be his biggest cheerleader. Geez, it's almost like it is the men that are complicated. The only outlet men let their emotion out though is sex. According to him, that is the only way men recharge, reconnect. If a man approaches you, that's all he thinks of. I mean, I don't think I need to get into why this is a lot of crap. Yeah, men do tend to be more sexually active than women, but no one thinks of sex 24/7. It's not like there's some machines and the only way to charge them is through sex. No, don't believe in that crap. Also, while we're at it, let's talk about cheating. Harvey uses the analogy of fishing, yes, fishing, to describe how men seek out women. You're either fishing for fun or fishing to eat. Men are by nature hunters, and women have been put in the position of being the prey. Men will treat women like one of these two things, a sports fish or a keeper. How does he decide whether a girl is a sports fish or a keeper? Well, he doesn't. You do. So it's under your control as to how he perceives you. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're in the health club and you're on the stair climber in your tight red athletic bra and matching form-fitting spandex gym pants, glistening and dewy with sweat, getting your workout on, looking really fit and sexy. This is peak men writing women. And for God's sake, do not approach people, especially women, at the gym. Gym is like the worst place to pick up women to practice the game. You're all red and sweaty and your hair is all messed up, and the last thing I would want is for someone to approach me. A good looking guy comes in. Looks like you had a good workout. How you respond, the way you control this exchange, will mean all the difference between whether he considers you a throwback or a keeper. Say something akin to, a girl's gotta look hot, and then twirl around so he can get a better view. A man will determine just from the 7 words and that tiny action that you're a woman who can be easily had. But respond to him by saying something like, "Thanks, my health is important to me, and working out is a great way to keep in shape." And he knows that he's going to have to dig a little deeper and find out more about you. This is your classic example of the Madonna and the whore complex, the polarized perceptions that women are either chaste, pure, good, nice girls, or promiscuous, seductive whores. This is a trope, a dichotomy that is older than life itself. And all Steve Harvey does is put a fishy twist on it, that women are either fishes that you can take home, fillet it up, put some cornmeal on, fry up, and serve on a delicious plate. Ugh. Or fishes that you can take a picture of, admire it with your buddies, and throw it back to sea. In his chapter on why men cheat, it's because they can. No explanation, it's just the way they are. Also because there's always women out there willing to cheat with them, which is the biggest reason of all. Same goes for being a mama's boy, having too much of an attachment with your own mother to the point his own relationship with his partner and children becomes second priority. Stop coming up with excuses and recognize that he's a mama's boy because you let him be one. Yes, I said it. It's your fault. You're picking up on a pattern at this point? Now the next thing I want to talk about is what this book became popular for. Steve Harvey introduces his 90-day rule, inspired by his old job, where you have to work for 90 days straight in order to prove yourself as an employee to receive benefits. You still get your check, but the additional benefits of health insurance, medical, and dental coverage is only after the 90 days, after you've shown them what you're capable of. In this situation, if you can't tell, the benefit is sex, the cookie as he calls it, if you know what I mean. And look, I would not judge anyone if you use the 90-day rule or any other rule of the playbook to get by your relationships. It can be difficult, but I can't help but to think of how transactional it makes the concept of a relationship seem. And this is not just directed at Steve Harvey, but the pickup artists, or as Wikipedia likes to call them, seduction community. Classification: psychological abuse, psychological manipulation. But what I'm trying to get at is, despite having there been thousands of books of rules written on how to get with women, the truth is that there is no rules. There are people who have had sex in their first date and are still together. There are people who only met 2 months ago and are now settled with a marriage and family. Obviously, there are some ground rules, like you don't want to date a serial killer, but ultimately, you have to go with your gut and do what feels right to you. But Steve Harvey's approach to relationships is very business-oriented, with terms like probationary period, very strategic, very black and white. So it was strange when he started ranting about what he thinks are deal breakers for men with no rational explanation. Like, if he hasn't got a good relationship with his mother, you have to delete his number and ghost him. Or if he's an atheist, you have to walk away.
Does he have a relationship with God? You sitting up here talking to a dude and he tells you he's an atheist, you need to pack it up and go home. You know, you talking to a person who don't believe in God, what's his moral barometer?
Or when he starts to ramble on about what he finds attractive in women, don't wear a t-shirt to bed every night. A little lingerie never hurt anybody. Do men prefer women in flats or heels? Heels, baby! If we could get athletic shoes with heels for women, we would. We all think heels make your legs more beautiful, they make your walk more feminine, and you too. No. Men are very simple creatures who would be prone to doing some very simple things if not for the women in our lives. Those complicated women making lives harder for poor, simple men. Men go out and get jobs and hustle to make money because of women. We drive fancy cars because of women. We dress nice, put on cologne, get haircuts and try to look all shiny and new for you. We do all of this because the more our game is stepped up, the more of you we get. You're the ultimate prize to us. Okay, a couple things. Firstly, Harvey's view of women as a prize, or the idea of a trophy wife in general, that rich, high status or high value men, as some like to call them, is a myth. There are so much studies out there that show that the biggest predictor for partner selection is similarity. So successful men tend to partner with women who are just as successful as them. It really is just a sexist myth that trivializes women's careers. Secondly, I do find it interesting how Steve Harvey picks and chooses which traditional values to abide by depending on how it benefits him. Perhaps it has to do with how women are raised these days. I'm convinced that being a girl is a lost art form, something that every woman can use some lessons in. How men appreciate a woman who can put together a meal. Men cannot stand women who are not clean. How if you want to keep your last name after marriage, why don't you go just marry your daddy? But if a guy has mommy issues, that is your fault. You made him that way. But when it comes to things that he has to do, like propose or ask for your hand in marriage according to traditional values, he's not doing that. If his woman hasn't required him to set the date, she is stupidly sitting there allowing her boyfriend to dictate to her when he's ready. Take yourself out of that 1945 mentality where you stand around waiting for some guy to beg you for your hand in marriage. It's not 1945 anymore. You can't hang on to those old days. Okay, serious question. If we take Harvey's word that men are simple for things that are important to any grown adult like marriage and family, to men it's on the same category as eating vegetables, how they need someone to make them grow up, how they need a woman to put him in his place, how she needs to teach him basic things that are common sense to most people, like not being a jerk and putting his family first because they are too unhinged to do so themselves.
Or maybe you just shouldn't be a jerk, Steve Harvey. Maybe men, I'm not talking about you specifically, but
Absolutely.
maybe men just shouldn't be jerk and do
and they
jerk-like
should
behavior.
But men can be taught proper behavior. Men can be required to have proper behavior, and that falls the responsibility on a woman.
Then why the f are the men in charge? I know thus far we've only talked about women because this is what this book is about, but let's switch gears for a bit and talk about relationships and love as a whole. I'm not here to sell you some guide, some dating book on seduction, but what I do want is for you to listen and subscribe if you want. Although Steve Harvey directs this book towards all women, a vast majority of his audience are African Americans, and this book being inspired by their questions and curious about relationships, it is inadvertently directed towards Black women. And if you have spent any time in the manosphere circles of YouTube, you would know that the dating situation between Black cishet couples is a dumpster fire with a clear vitriol towards Black women. And there are several reasons as to why Black women struggle to find a partner, and spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with them. But in the Black neighborhoods or the ghetto, there is a very obvious sex ratio imbalance due to Black men being mass incarcerated, unemployed, or experiencing an early death. As a result of which, Black men that do stick around are praised for doing the bare minimum of holding a job and staying out of trouble, with a huge pool of single Black women for them to choose from to date. And for Black women, they have to compete with each other for these men, leading to desperation where they might as well bend over backwards for them. So what you get is a group of entitled, picky men who can play the field indefinitely, as according to Stanford professor Ralph Richard Banks, because economically successful Black men are relatively rare, their power on the dating market is heightened. And despite constantly being stereotyped as being too picky, it is actually Black women who are more likely than women of any other races to marry men who are less successful than them, educationally or occupationally. And you don't have to be some dating guru or relationship coach to see how this might not work out. Furthermore, the idea of a patriarchal household with the man being the protector and the provider and women being the homemaker is a product of white supremacy. As feminist author and professor Bell Hooks points out in her book, We Real Cool, Black Men and Masculinity, African men prior colonization did not seek to dominate and shared a different standpoint to masculinity than the white settlers. This idea of a patriarchal nuclear family was further enforced during the 50s through the concept of the American dream, which did not even include Black people in the first place. And hopefully, this is not too much of a hot take, but gender as we know it is not working. It's definitely not working now. It did not work back in 2009 when Steve Harvey wrote his book. And I would argue that it didn't even work during the golden age of the American dream in the 50s. Domestic abuse was rampant back then. And can we please collectively scrape the idea of the 50s and the 60s being good old days. The glamour of 50s comes from a stable economy that controlled inflation through wealth distribution and not from rigid gender roles. It may have been good if you belonged to a certain demographic, but for most people it was miserable. With social media and technology, right now we're more connected than ever. Therefore, if you're looking to date, you don't have to be stuck in your tiny hometown. You can meet people across the country, across the globe even. There are so many options, but with that comes the higher stake of the security of these relationships. Therefore, even though Steve Harvey can go on about how if a man truly loves you, he will walk through a mountain or on water for you, which is nice. But in today's world, it's not very applicable as you don't really need anyone to walk through a mountain for you, ever. Conversely, if you are a cishet woman looking to date men, simply just being submissive and looking the part is not going to be enough, especially if you want to date people who are at a higher status than you. As I've already mentioned, the idea of a trophy wife is merely a myth. What is necessary is to rather work on yourself. Work on finding yourself, finding your values, working on your dreams and ambitions, having a unique personality other than the ones that are enforced by society, which is clearly seeming to be difficult for some people, and that is okay.
Love is not safe. In fact, it's the opposite of that. You share bills, a house, a bed. That person is a liability. They are uniquely positioned to hurt you, and you have to be okay with that.
Hooks further contends, while critics of black male and female relationships are correct when they call attention to intense levels of conflict, they tend to misunderstand the nature of that conflict. Most black women and men are not fighting because women want gender equality and men want male dominance. More often than not, they are fighting because one party feels the other party has failed to fulfill the role they agreed to play. For the cishet relationships to reform, the nature of the relationship itself has to reform. And obviously, I can't speak for everyone because there definitely are and always will be men out there who want trophy wives and women who want sugar daddies, and that's fine, I don't have anything against that. But when I think of myself and the people that I know and what I want out of a relationship, at its core, I just want a companion. I want a partnership, someone who is equal to me, someone who gets me and whom I can share the relationship with 50-50. I know previously I called out Steve Harvey for his transactional views on relationships, but romantic relationships to some extent is conditional. You're in a way showing vulnerability to this person in ways that you would not show to your family, to your friends, and they need to show to you that they're worthy of your trust, that they're the right person for you. While I have been tearing down Harvey's views of relationships in this entire video, there are some things that he does right and I do want to credit him for that. There are some worksheets that he provides in the book that are decent and can be good for self-development. You don't have to buy the entire book for these worksheets, but you can journal, you can keep a diary, talk to those close to you. Ultimately, just have a strong sense of self, of who you are before letting in someone else. And don't hit on anyone at the gym. Just don't. So that's kind of all for today. Thanks for watching, especially if you made it till the end. You can check out some of my other videos, like and subscribe and comment what you'd like to see next. And I'll see you on my next one.
Once a guy is interested in you, we lock in. We don't care what you do. You know, I've passed 3 or 4 suggestions. You could like a restraining order